chance to do so. Let's check in now with the North American standings, as we always do to kick off the broadcast. Today we're looking at the middle of the pack, and I can't believe that I'm saying that Tempo Storm is in there, but that is indeed where they're at. Tempo Storm versus SpaceStation currently tied in the standings, and guess what? We get to see a series between the two of them.
Even though they are tied in the standings, I still feel like this is going to be a very upper hand to Tempo Storm. You know, we have to give a little bit of credit here, even though SpaceStation is holding their own, and again, the numbers sit near 50-50. I feel like this is still going to be a major upset if SpaceStation Gaming ends up getting the win.
But who made that upset last part?
SpaceStation Gaming.
That was it. They've already made the upset once. We'll see if they can do it again. SpaceStation had their boot camp. They came into part 2. We're not very dominant initially versus Lag Force. They ended up losing to Lag Force, which is why all the other potential Crucible teams are now in the position they were in yesterday, and we talked a lot about that. But now we're starting to look toward playoffs, and Tempo Storm wants to get into a good position that if they can't claim one of the top 2 spots in the standings and get a guaranteed entry into our HGC finals at BlizzCon, that they're at least set up so they don't have to play too many series once we get to playoffs.
Minimize the amount of games that you have to play, revealing, or I guess hiding as many strategies as you can through the ladder system that we do have built. Every team, as long as you are not within Crucible range, has the opportunity to be that third representative, but it's so very safe if you are the 1 and 2 slot, which it feels like it's kind of fallen out of reach here for Tempo Storm. I haven't done the math on that one, but I mean, it would be as severe as if they failed against SpaceStation Gaming here. I think it would be very likely that they could find themselves out of that area.
And honestly, Tempo Storm have lost their first 2 series of the part. It cannot feel good.
7 games and only 1 of them has been a win.
Yep.
That is something that is very uncharacteristic considering the amount of games that they played. Their win-loss record being below 50% threshold after more than just, 2 games being played is a rare statement. 7 and only 1 of them being considered a win is a huge setback for Tempo.
Yeah, not something we are accustomed to with Tempo Storm. Let's check in with the schedule today and see where you can expect that match to take place. But first, we just closed out Europe for the weekend, and Fnatic and Team Dignitas are fastly emerging as the top 2 of the region. We already knew Fnatic was going to be there in some capacity, but Dignitas is emerging along with them in the 2nd place. We're going to close out today seeing if Roll20 can end their first 2 weekends with a 12-0 score in games, which is extremely impressive, or if Superstars can take the first game off of them that they will have lost this part. But first, a rematch of one of the biggest upsets that we had in all of part 1, and that is SpaceStation Gaming versus Tempo Storm. You feel like Tempo Storm has an upper hand in here? Is that based on the play that you saw from Tempo versus Gale Force? Is it based on the play that you saw from SpaceStation last weekend?
I think it's more from SpaceStation than it is of Tempo. Even though Tempo has been a struggling team within North America, especially as of late, I just feel like SpaceStation had only a short-lived life of hype, sitting behind them, where they really were kind of like that moment. Are they as good as we think that they may be able to display? And it's been slowly a decline, a decline, a decline. Even with the boot camp, it doesn't feel like it ever reverted itself completely. And so assuming that that does not happen here today, I feel like natural play would lead to a Tempo Storm win.
Well, SpaceStation has the boot camp and the break, the rest, but Tempo Storm has the international experience. Who is going to get a leg up in the standings? Let's find out now.
I think EU has been a big implement to our team in regards of stability to drafting. He's really good at analyzing our team mistakes and helping us improve. I think Tempo Storm is a really strong team. In regards to our match, it would be a lot similar to our match last time with them, and it'll be a very close series, but I think we have all the means to win the set against them. We'll come out swinging and set the tempo of the game and get an early advantage and be unrelentless in punishing them.
The biggest change to this week's meta adjustment, I think that we'll be seeing way more Garrosh than before, as he was proven to be fairly effective against some teams that may not have played optimally against him. And this patch brought about 3 massive buffs to his already standard playstyle. So I expect that he will continue to be a dominant force. SpaceStation as a team, their power goes up and down severely depending on if they get the kind of drafts they're comfortable with. What we're looking to do going into this set with SpaceStation is identify what it is they're trying to play, adjust to it during the series to either deny those picks or to pick appropriate counters. We feel like we should be fine in a 5-game series against them. We're feeling pretty confident about that set.
Could hear from Tiger JK how important it is for SpaceStation to get an early lead and be able to snowball it. It's a strategy that worked very well versus Even in Death last weekend and let them get a quick victory over them in 3-0. But can that work versus a team like Tempo Storm, Dread?
Kinda, yes and no. I don't know. Tempo is good enough to where they should get the upper hand. The one thing you can rely on, I would say, for SpaceStation if they're going into the series, is to give more. You know, they have 9 lives. They
get more opportunities.
Exactly. It's going to be many opportunities the late state of the game where normally you'd be like, this game is done. And it will not be ending because Tempo Storm will most likely fail to push their advantage as hard as they possibly can. But that doesn't mean that the early game advantage is something that they can rely on to. And even if they do get it, I don't think it means that they can keep control of it. By no means do I feel like Tempo Storm is not a team that can steal it. The only thing Tempo Storm has consistently displayed as a weakness is just not pulling the trigger when they can.
Well, if you guys remember, too, the last series between the two of these teams, there was only one game out of all 5 that SpaceStation were able to not fall behind in the early game and then make some sort of great core call, which is something that they are known for, but they don't want to be only reliant on that as a strategy, which is why they have been making the shift to trying to control the early game. It's just whether or not they can do that and continue to snowball that into a victory over a team with the caliber of skill like Tempo Storm. We're ready to get into the match, starting with Battleground number 1, Cursed Hollow, chosen by SpaceStation. Tempo Storm has again banned Braxis Holdout, and then the Warhead Junction ban from SpaceStation Gaming. SpaceStation varies their bans up, but this is the 2nd time in a row now that Tempo Storm has not banned Infernal Shrines.
Which, with the trending that Tempo Storm has displayed in the past, whenever they shift their ideas and their paradigm on what is going to be their map ban, it kind of holds true until the next time that it happens, months or even weeks in advance. So we can assume that that is now the Tempo Storm ban. I feel like seeing it for the 2nd time. But I want to highlight here on the fact that SpaceStation Gaming is willing to bring us to Cursed Hollow for Game 1. Yes, Cursed Hollow is a map that SpaceStation Gaming is very, very comfortable on. It has been the highest priority for them as of late. But Tempo Storm has gotten a recent rise in priority onto the map, looking from Phase 1 into Phase 2 for them. And so it just already is a pretty big call out in confidence levels to be kicking off Game 1 on a map like Cursed.
Now, both of these teams have a lot of focus on Greymane as a hero, but of the two, SpaceStation is far more likely to draft it up as high as their 1-2 picks in this draft, number 1. Whether that changes Tempo Storm's priority on the hero, that remains to be seen. With a ban on Tassadar, though, SpaceStation's looking at Abathur. What do you think that leads to for Tempo Storm?
I mean, it's got to be the Dahaka pickup. This has been 3 heroes that Tempo Storm on any major map has enjoyed getting the ban process through. By getting the Tassadar, seeing the Abathur response, and it has led to that high priority into the Dahaka. We'll see if it still holds true here versus SpaceStation Gaming, but this is the exact trend they displayed versus Gale Force Esports, and it still holds true here today.
Does that mean we get a Greymane Rhaegar for SpaceStation now? That was the last time versus Even in Death rotations that they made. Both of those heroes have been high priority for them, making sure that they can get Greymane as one of 3 potential players' heroes. All 3 of their damage dealers can play this Greymane. They're going to switch it up, but it's still the same too.
I was going to say, I mean, you've been talking about the trending of SpaceStation Gaming picking up that Rhaegar and Greymane. It is so serious of a trend that if they didn't end up picking a hero, I'd be like, they're very much preparing a wild draft for us. Like, that is how insane the priority and consistency of the priority SpaceStation Gaming has displayed throughout phase number 2. But now looking over towards Tempo Storm, what do they want to pick up? The Dahaka by no means locks them into any specific playstyle, and it's not like SpaceStation Gaming's Rhaegar and Greymane. It's, you know, so niche in a direction that if Tempo Storm feels like they might have to commit to a playstyle. So it's really to each their own. Right now, again, looking at the series versus Gale Force Esports, they were comfortable going into Genji and Arthas.
Genji's still there, but it's Malthael this time, which is guaranteed very melee-heavy composition as we move forward for Tempo Storm. They still need their primary warrior and then a support to follow up with that. Uther, a likely possibility now, especially with Malthael, Tormented Souls, and Genji. So much so that I wouldn't be surprised if we see a hover on Uther, at least consideration from SpaceStation to ban him. As I say that, they are considering it. You don't want to allow Dragonblade with the Divine Shield nor a Tormented Souls.
And on the side of Tempo Storm, a band that really is screaming, or at least standing out more than it normally would be, has got to be the Falstad. After the emphasis of the ban onto Abathur, removing one global, the pickup of Dahaka on the side of Tempo Storm. SpaceStation Gaming has already shown in one of their games that they may have interest of picking higher Malfurions out of fear of the Malthael and the Dahaka in the Rise of Priority on the current patch. So I feel like this is a perfect situation where they're either going to 100% confirm it or Tempo just flat rids of it. We talked about the weird trade-offs of Gust with Inevitable End, without Inevitable End. In both cases, I view that as a pretty big success story for SpaceStation Gaming. And with the ETC banned out, it is a opportunity for them to pick that up.
ETC ban now, removing a hero that Casanova has found quite a lot of success on for SpaceStation in the last 2 series. So we'll have to change up what warrior he has. Tyrael still seems pretty good to have Sanctification versus a Dragonblade and a Tormented Souls composition, enabling the Greymane. We already know that SpaceStation is almost certainly building Greymane more and as an aggressive Worgen because all 3 of their damage dealers like that Hong Kono style of build.
Yeah, you are right. Like that would also kind of solve the problem of the Malthael on top of it, to be able to stack on top of one another, ignore the prepping into the Genji. It is a choice. Arthas is another mobility hero that they might end up selecting. They go with the Garrosh. Not too major of an argument for that one. And then they end up committing to that fall set I was talking about before. The Garrosh seems a little bit wild here. And then a Snap a Noob and Lucio here for Tempo Storm.
Before when we were seeing Lucio pickups, it was versus Malthaels because of how well Sound Barrier does versus Tormented Souls. So now we're seeing that Tempo Storm is just on the Lucio hype train.
I mean, I'm down. I am okay with Lucio being a thing here in the North American scene. He, again, fails to have any cross-supporting or peeling to be able to aid him here. So we'll see how June is going to keep up the members of Tempo Storm, if they even need it. You know, they might just be so aggressive with all of those melees on their side of the table. But SpaceStation Gaming still has a pick remaining. They can really pick about any role here with the comp as the last pick, but the biggest thing I'm hoping for is got to be that Tyrael or the Arthas we were talking about before. With that many melees on the other side of the table, Tyrael seems to make the biggest impact. It's going to force a lot of communication between Falset and Tyrael to not use both Gus and Sanct to mistime those.
But Arthas offers more follow-up CC after Garrosh's pull, so it just depends what is more important to them, or they'll just get Zeratul.
If there was a major Wombo combo, I feel like that Zeratul pickup was really cool. Just into that many melees, you can very reliably know that you as a Zeratul are going to hit huge voids. And anytime that you know that you can get at least a 3-man void about every single time you're pressing your R, you want to make sure you have follow-up. There's, I don't want to say zero, but it's pretty darn close to zero follow-up on the side of SpaceStation Gaming. At least major wombos or high-impact, follow-ups. Yeah, you can throw out a boomerang, and sometimes the Zeratul Void Boomerang is enough to win a team fight, but very rarely is that the case. So I am a little bit concerned in that area here for SpaceStation Gaming with this composition.
The other thing that concerned me for SpaceStation is that they willingly drafted Garrosh into Malthael. We know that Malthael can be a big problem for Garrosh because his Reaper's Mark completely ignores his armor, which is one of Garrosh's 2 big selling points, the other being that he can cause the displacement. And there is a ton of mobility now for Tempo Storm as a way of getting away from that displacement. You immediately saw in a new Barak draft after that. Lucio is going to help with that too, boosting people away. There's a lot of mobility, a lot of ways of making sure that Tempo Storm can adjust now and deal with the Garrosh, which was their downfall against Roll20. So let's see how it works out for them. We're going into game number 1 on Cursed Hollow between Tempo Storm and SpaceStation Gaming.
And it's starting with the blue side, SpaceStation Gaming. We have Tiger JK playing the Rhaegar. Jason will be on Falstad. Casanova on that risky Garrosh. Equinox will be the Zeratul. And last is going to be Talking Trees on Greymane.
And for the members of Tempo Storm in the red, support player June on Lucio. Fury switching back to Dahaka in the side laning role. Koth and Luck will be playing Genji. Sam will be playing Malthael, and that puts Caterpillar back into the main warrior role on a new Barak.
Tempo Storm still mixing up these roles. granted, this is a composition where, about any team would have to flex their team and the backliners have to be onto the melees. It is a small adjustment, but one that might set Tempo Storm back here in this game.
It's cool to see Luck playing Genji. I think this is his first Genji game, but he has played Abathur with Genji so much that obviously he's had a lot of experience playing the Genji in one form or the other. But yes, the switch back between the Warrior players again. We have seen just about every iteration of Tempo Storm in this part and who is going to be side laning. We saw it with Som versus Roll20, even picking up Dahaka and playing that so that he could be the consistent solo laner, and then Caterpillar was playing Tassadar. Then versus Galeforce Esports went back to a very familiar playstyle of having Fury on the main Warrior, and Caterpillar was that side laning Dahaka. And now we're back to what they decided to do immediately after mid-season brawl, which was switch back to having Fury in the side lane. Whether or not this is just a temporary thing based on the heroes that we have, that remains to be seen in the rest of the series.
Has remained to be seen. But the thing, hold on a minute here, up on top, it's just going to be a small skirmish. Cattle looking to punish back here, but Trees has the dodge here. Just going to be a trade here up in the top lane as the teams are waiting for those tributes. But on the note of the draft of SpaceStation, we had a lot to be said about a lot of the different picks. And all of them feel like they are, SpaceStation's played them in the past, and it's not that these players are unknown for them. It's more of like in the case in which they're picking it, it's standing out, but you aren't finding the argument so easily. The Zeratul going into Vorpal and a standard Zeratul build is what we see Equinox going towards. I thought maybe with kind of the wildness of that and the 5 melees or 4.5, however you want to view the Genji,
basically,
is going to be a Q build. That is something that has become far more popular. Getting the rending damage, getting the CDR whenever you hit multiple targets, but still not the choice here. So the only thing I have left in my brain for that Zeratul being picked up as the follow-up has got to be an adjustment to Garrosh, not going with Taunt. It's actually got to be Cleave.
You think it'll be Decimate?
I don't think it will be, but that is the only thing remaining. I don't see an AoE Taunt being a big enough justification to get a Void Wombo combo. So then what's the other area you go? It's got to be damage. I'm not saying this is the case. Again, just using the rules and parameters of draft that we have taken through international study, something stands out, and we're looking for the answers. Cattle, though, looking for answers too. Vorpal follow-up from Equinox is going to force him to teleport, and the channel started by SpaceStation.
I almost wonder if the As Equinox is found by Luck and brought down for First Blood. I almost wonder if the Void Prison is more of a stop in what we are already seeing from Tempo Storm, which is just all in, all together, all the time, and get the kills. If they have the Void Prison at 10, they can slow that down and try to isolate somebody out of that, or at least get a setup so that they can turn around and have the AoE taunt from Warlord's Challenge after the fact.
But either way, that first tribute was rather successful for the members of Tempo Storm, even not losing too much experience down below as Fury made that transition down to the bottom lane. Equinox has been just, moving around the entire map as the Zeratul without any squishies existing on the side of Tempo Storm. No gank seems really that appealing. Fury was the focus for a moment, but if you don't land the Singularity Spike, let's be real, even Dahaka or not, it's very unlikely you get a kill.
And an immediate pop of Essence, so at least they forced him to use the Essence, but in getting one who collects, that should be back in no time for Fury, as long as he's sticking in that lane. Tempo Storm about to get their level 7 talents, and we're working our way toward having the next tribute spawning. It will be in the bottom lane. That is where both of the globals are for the teams. So let me adjust what is the setup for this next tribute fight.
We're about to find out. 3 more seconds. Falstad's in position, but everybody's focused towards mid. Casanova found himself a June, but the mobility there is going to be too much for the members of SpaceStation Gaming to confirm the kill, and the tribute is forfeited because of this initiation through mid.
Yeah, that is the issue with the early Rhaegar and then into the Garrosh. There is just not a whole lot of ways of locking someone down after the flip. That's why we see when Roll20 drafts Garrosh, a lot of emphasis in making sure that they get Uther early on. So they have the point-and-click stun to follow up, giving extra time. It's going to be so difficult, and that was Lucio himself. Imagine once he speeds someone away. This time, though, the team already in position. They've got the Tiger JK and Talking Trees there. And importantly, Talking Trees was there to get the first stack of what he's hoping will be mini, up to 10 for Wizened Duelist.
Wizened Duelist stacks are something that you have to be fearful of. If you have not ever played against a fully stacked Greymane, I mean, it is really just a very different beast, no pun intended there. But Tempo Storm, with the true tribute advantage that they've been able to obtain, and really, even though it hasn't been as flashy as you normally would expect. They are the ones controlling this laning phase. It is very important that SpaceStation Gaming find a way to make something happen over that next tribute, because the Falset and Zeratul during a curse don't have really many objectives that they can make a proactive play with during a tribute. They're going to be responsive, defending, and wanting to force a team fight. Without the heroics, it's going to be disincentivized. Psalm, though, is a player who's got to be second-guessing his positioning. Garrosh has caught him out multiple times, and a lot of the flip kills have been onto Psalm.
He did see Garrosh go down to the bottom who hit Dahaka, but even just having the Greymane and Rhaegar there was enough to put the hurt on Psalm slightly, bring down the health bar. A tribute is claimed by SpaceStation Gaming, but the bottom lane was left. Now Falstad's being kept from getting back here to clear out that wave. He has to go all the way around in the safe rotation. Cawthon chasing him on a merry little chase. Casanova will catch Cawthon and Cattle heading down, but still, Fury did massive damage to this bottom lane, getting both of the towers in the gate.
And it's left the experience pretty close. Equinox dropping the Vorpal, but movement speed and healing is too much here from June. Very thankful of the recent buff onto Lucio, the only reason he survives that, but it does come at a cost. A lot of damage. They're onto the top fort, but with the punishment we just saw, Fury pressuring through bottom. This has been more responsive than proactive. Even so much so, Jason better. No, the silence. That is one dead bird?
Hello.
Not like this, man. The minions.
Yeah, he's gone. He's gone for 22 more seconds, and he took Hinterland Blast. There you go. You wanted to follow up for a Void Prison, and Dredge, you've got it.
All right, so now this all is starting to make a lot more sense. A lot more sense that we get the Hinterlands Blast as a follow-up. But Gilly, Hinterlands Blast and Void Prison are colossal cooldowns. To stop a 5-man melee composition, I just feel like there were shorter cooldowns that could have been used to deal with that.
Bear with me, though. You get the Void Prison down on a lot of people. It's 25-second cooldown reduction for your Hinterland Blast per hero hit. If they hit all of them, it's not starting out to the best so far. There's no Gust now to make sure that Rhaegar gets away. But in the future.
In the future. Equinox.
After this, when it comes back.
When everybody goes down, they come back. I'm sorry, Equinox. I respect your efforts and whoever is this poor soul in the cocoon, but I just don't know if it's going to change the outcome here. The taunt goes down. Casanova flips. But in the end, that is another kill given over to Tempo Storm. During this curse that has 40 seconds remaining, the bottom fort is without a doubt going to be converted. Fury is fine here up on top. How much more is Tempo Storm going to get? A double fort would be a pretty reasonable, achievement after the first curse.
I don't know, though. There's a lot of time getting those kills down in the bottom lane. Important heroic abilities weren't used except Warlord's Challenge, which is fairly short. Zeratul's going to be back. Garrosh should be back in time to run up to this mid. But bottom is going to be a problem, making sure that they soak up that experience. Psalm has pushed that all the way to the towers. Someone's got to get down here.
That's really dramatic. I'm going to be honest, I play without that audio cue, so I haven't gotten to experience that.
It's fairly new.
Yeah, it is, and it's really dramatic. I haven't actually gotten to embrace it that much before. That was serious. 13
it's like the clock tower of doom.
13 talents here. Oh, Fury, though, is being focused so heavily by SpaceStation. He drops the isolation. Cleanse is going to be used. Equinox now in a bad spot.
Here it
Forced
comes.
to drop the Void.
Here we go.
No.
Boom.
And a little lackluster. Casanova is under pressure. Dragonblade getting a lot of value for Cawthon. The flips used. Casanova is the first to fall. Tiger JK, he's going to be chain CC'd to death. 2 members down. Tempo Storm is looking at the Hinterlands Blast and suddenly remembering maybe why it's falling out of flavor there. It kind of tickled. It didn't necessarily chunk the way we were hoping for.
It turns out Sound Barrier does all right versus it. And Hinterland Blast went off first, and then they had the Sound Barrier connect. But even with that, Sound Barrier gave the shielding needed for Tempo Storm to continue on in the fight, take out both Rhaegar and Garrosh.
Somebody has got to find a way to be able to force that Sound Barrier. If that is too big of a tool for them to be able to deal with, there has to be a way to bait June into dropping the Sound Barrier. You and I talked about this on initial release when Lucio came out, about how the interactions with Zeratul are some of the coolest in the world of supporting by being able to, because you have a cast time on your Sound Barrier and the Void Prison being on the ground, you can half channel and then initiate into it. Essentially, what I'm trying to say here is SpaceStation Gaming can has to be successful with the combo enough to bait that from Tempo Storm, and then maybe later they can make a huge play. It's going to start here, focusing on the Psalm.
Hinterlands, he still doesn't go down. The healing's so good. Ancestral healing does connect, but it was low because of Touch of Death on trees. He's still being chased by June, and with the boop, make sure that they get the kill. It's a 3-for-1 so far as Garrosh drops. No Gust to save poor Falstad. He will also fall. And with that, Tempo Storm getting 4 kills for the one on Psalm can take the boss of SpaceStation.
They're going to get that 16 talents here so much faster than the members of SpaceStation Gaming as well. With that top boss still not being dealt with, as you see Tiger JK trying to clean that up, we know this tribute's going to be going towards Tempo Storm. A minimum of the mid 4 or at least bottom keep. Either way, SpaceStation Gaming find themselves another structure down in the next couple of minutes, and Tempo Storm, it's their game to lose at this point.
All right, we know the setup for the team fights for SpaceStation. So what adjustments need to be made? If they're going to bait out Sound Barrier first, it almost seems like Garrosh needs to be the one to get a pull on somebody. A juicy enough target, probably Psalm. Pull in Psalm, make things here, but then all he does is if he has Tormented Souls, he turns around and drops that. And then you can have the Sound Barrier. Ideally, you get through both of those things, you make sure that they group up, then you've got the Void Prison, and then you can Hinterland Blast. But so far, Lucio, and June on that Lucio, has been very patient with the Sound Barrier, and no one's been able to cut through it. And now, this has been pre-16. Now he's 16. He has Rejuvenescencia. He only scales up to that late game healing from here.
Hold on a minute. Equinox didn't last long. Cocoon dropped. My goodness. Tempo Storm is on a tear right now. The knock-up is not going to be there. The flip on the Cawthon, but he's got the Swift Strike away. Dahaka starting himself the second tribute here for Tempo Storm. Now at Curse Point, Psalm gets taunted. He gets dragged. He doesn't get flipped yet. Tormented Souls popped to 4 versus 4. Keep in mind, this is Tempo Storm taking this without a Dahaka. They are just done with SpaceStation Gaming. Fury joins the battle, finds a bird and a kill.
It was without Dahaka, then Dahaka came in to make sure that Tempo Storm could get a second kill. That is a huge staggered death time, just as Zeratol was about to come online. But that was the situation we were talking about, right? They get the flip on Psalm, he uses Tormented, and Sound Barrier goes down. After that, as long as you have a Zeratol, maybe the grouping, if you could pull them into a choke because they're so melee heavy, you could Void Prison for that, but it's about survival.
I feel like there's another way that is more risky, but I feel like going to be more probable to succeed. At this point, I don't know if anything can recover, but if it is going to be the case, I think it's got to be Talking Trees. The Greymane has to be the one threatening on the backline, forcing a Cocoon or at least one major defensive, and then once that is burst, as long as Equinox then applies the pressure. The problem that's happening right now is Equinox is the man representing the pressure at first every single time, and I mean, we know that he is legitimately the core. He is the one spawning the green bubble. That is the first step. That is this Wombo combo. And if he's the one being focused on and attended to at all times by Tempo Storm, how do you ever assume you're going to get a combo?
Especially with Isolation and Cocoon. Those are two very good ways to just catch Equinox as soon as he pokes his face out.
So then I think that Greymane's got to be the one draw those cooldowns. Then we see Equinox, because otherwise he panic voids.
No.
It just gets worse. Everything falling apart.
All right, Tempo Storm stepping forward. They've got a curse yet again. Cocoon is there in the back, was just giving time for Tempo Storm to take down this keep. 3-level lead, 14 kills to 3, as Tempo Storm claim the first keep of the game and back away.
What else are we going to see Tempo Storm achieve during this second curse, of the game? Man, it's still kind of mind-blowing to think of all the tributes going down on the map and SpaceStation only achieving one so far. That is just how dominant Tempo Storm's been. But there is a taunt, a big Hinterlands blast. Sound Barrier goes down. The body blocks are real. Ancestral connects onto Casanova, but he is stuck between all of the members of Tempo Storm. He ends up going down. Cawthon is just hacking at SpaceStation Gaming, and that is it. 4-0. Tempo Storm is going to end this game.
That they will. Very dominant fashion. 18 kills to 3, and with a continued 3-level lead in the late game. SpaceStation Gaming, whether a draft issue for them, does seem to be a drafting issue for them, but it does go back to a way that SpaceStation like to draft, which is responsive and experimental. They brought in the Garrosh. There was already a lot of ways of being able to deal with him. more things were drafted from Tempo. They still had the spots to be able to draft even more ways of making sure that they could get people out of the poles. They had all of the escape from Lucio and from Manu Barak, and Malthael was already there. Touch of Death was a problem for the Rhaegar. Tempo Storm just really felt like they had everything figured out even before that Zeratul pick.
I mean, they really did, I feel like. And the Zeratul pick was maybe a bit more because of that exact reason, right? Zeratul, one of the few characters other than, I would say, Medivh, that I put at the, if he plays perfectly alone, has the opportunity to still win that game. And it was Equinox's role, so it makes the most sense to flex into the Zeratul and try and overcome what might be a colossal setback into the draft.
What we talked a lot about what ways that maybe the members could have been able to come back in the game. What do you think that game would have looked like for SpaceStation Gaming had they had Mighty Gust?
Probably worse. I know that sounds really weird. They would have by going the direction they went into the draft, I would argue is a more respectable decision than a lot of teams would have taken in that avenue. When we talk about a team that's suddenly losing a game consistently over time, and then you're like, well, they got to do something different, but they failed to do it. We're oftentimes like, just one time, at least regroup, give it your all for that last moment. That's what I felt like that, at least for the level 10 heroic adjustment, was for the members of SpaceStation. It was, okay, this is going to be a problem, and all right, if we go traditional heroics, it's actually not going to work out. So you go for the Wombo, get the explosion on multiple targets, and hopefully that's enough to overcome the death ball that was built by the members of Tempo. It was just pretty apparent through the rotations and Equinox unable to make anything happen in levels 1 through 9, ganking into the side lanes. It just got out of control and made what was a risky choice look even poorer than maybe it had been at first.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of is maybe a reason to still get Mighty Gust is to slow the momentum down, because then that really came down to just Void, and Equinox was under so much constant fire from all of Tempo Storm that at least that way they would have had another 2 different ways of slowing down Tempo Storm once Tempo went on a tear with Tormented Souls, Dragonblade, because once those things wound up, it was done.
Yeah.
Things were going down for SpaceStation.
And that's why when we see Malthaels and Genji, especially together, we talk about the Tormented Souls and the cooldown and how playing around that cooldown is so very important. I very much view it as the original Malfurion's Tranquility, but inverse. Like, it was so good at healing, you just could not fight into it, or you lost the fight. So it was like, bait the trank, and then you disengage and all in the next team fight every single time. Tormented Souls is the exact same case. You're like, well, does he have Tormented Souls? If he doesn't, I'm willing to take that fight so many more times.
Well, as we're waiting for SpaceStation to figure out if they want first pick or battleground choice, let's take a look at the global progress bar for Cheers so far. I noticed that we reached the 18 million point today during the European broadcast, I think is what it was. So we're getting pretty close to the Arcane Chaos Lizard. Thank you all so much for cheering for your favorite teams. You can unlock some awesome in-game items as well. Are you repping any teams so far in your in-game items, Dread?
And when it comes to in-game items, I've only flaunted the Tempo Storm the first time just because mainly I was like, you know, this is what I wanted when I played. We talked about that. Since then, I've been repping. I've been going with the MVP Black. I'm thinking about mixing it up, though. Haven't decided where I'm going next. Probably outside of Korea, so I want to say a Chinese team, like
I threw a little E-Star in there.
Yeah.
Old school.
Okay.
Old school. I had some E-Star in there. Also, I've been playing some Garrosh, so I had to drop all the Roll20 stuff, of course.
That's a must-have. You
Yeah,
know,
it's justing.
You got to try and be justing. That's what I do when I throw it on the sprays.
Yeah, I'm channeling my inner justing.
What would justing do?
Kill people, I think is what it is.
Flip
in the
them?
game. Slow down, justing. Okay, game 2. Let's get into it.